Welcome to another explainer. Today we are jumping right into one of the most profound, frustrating, and honestly universally relatable philosophical dilemmas ever put down on paper. We're unpacking a highly dramatic moment from the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata. And we aren't just looking at a mythological story today. We're looking at a total crisis of faith in the very concept of fairness. I mean, what happens when doing the right thing literally leads to your absolute ruin?
So, if a vicious life wins, why be virtuous? It's a question that just hits you right in the gut, doesn't it? We've all felt it on some level. You play by the rules, you work hard, you treat people well, and then you watch someone who breaks every single rule and steps on everyone else get the ultimate reward. But in the text we're exploring today, this isn't just about someone stealing a promotion at work. It's about the fate of an entire kingdom and the brutal suffering of the most righteous people on earth. Which brings us to a really powerful statement from a character named Balarama. Picture him standing at the holy spot of Prabhasa, looking at his friends who have quite literally lost the whole shebang. He utters these deeply despairing words, "I do not see that the practice of virtue leads to any good, or that unrighteous practices can cause evil." Balarama is having a complete crisis of his worldview here. And to understand why he's so upset, we are going to break his argument down into a 3-act philosophical true crime narrative. Act 1. The Crisis of Virtue. Let's look at the stark, undeniable reality that triggered Balarama's massive speech of righteous indignation. He's looking at two very different sets of people, and the visual extreme of this injustice is just fundamentally breaking his understanding of how the universe is supposed to work. On one side, we have Yudhishthira. This guy is the son of the god of virtue, he's strictly truthful, he's liberal-hearted, and he flat-out refuses to swerve from the righteous path. And as reward, he gets robbed of his throne, and now he's living in a miserable state out in the woods with matted hair, literally wearing the bark of trees. On the flip side, we have Duryodhana, the guy who orchestrated this whole theft. He is ruling the earth. He's completely flourishing. The ground hasn't swallowed him up. He's just winning. So the crucial point here is the ripple effect this has on society at large. What should people do in such a matter? Balarama points out that an average observer, a person of limited sense, as he puts it, watching all this play out might easily conclude that a vicious course of life is actually way better than a virtuous one. I mean, if the ultimate good guy is dressed in tree bark and the ultimate bad guy is sitting on a golden throne, why on earth would anyone choose to be good? It's a doubt that perplexes everyone.
Act 2. The Complicit Elders.
Because let's be real, an injustice of this massive magnitude doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It requires a system to fail. It requires people with power to intentionally look the other way. Shifting his narrative to a scathing societal critique, Balarama delivers this incredibly powerful exclamation, "Fie upon the vicious-minded leaders of Bharata's race." You can practically hear the sheer disbelief and anger in his voice. He isn't just mad at the villains anymore. He is utterly disgusted by the establishment. He's calling out the enablers, the supposedly wise and honorable men who just stood by and let the righteous be banished.
And he names names. We're talking about Bhima, Kripa, the Brahmana Drona, and the aged king. These are the senior members of the house, the respected elders, the teachers, the moral compasses of their society. And what are they doing while Yudhishthira literally starves in the woods? Well, according to Balarama, they're just living happily. They banished the innocent sons of Pritha, and now they're just going about their days. It brilliantly highlights the shocking breadth of their complicity. The system hasn't just failed, it has actively endorsed the villains. But Balarama saves his absolute sharpest critique for the man at the very top, the aged king. The text frames the king's blindness as this fascinating dual metaphor. Yes, he is physically sightless, but far more importantly, he has become morally sightless. He is driven blind among the kings of the entire earth because he perpetrated, or at the very least allowed, an inhuman act against his own nephews. He fearlessly sent them away into the forest, completely blind to the absolute moral catastrophe he was unleashing. To drive this home, Balarama uses this chilling, almost surreal imagery to describe the king's state of mind. He suggests that when the king committed this act, he must have been standing on a cremation ground, looking at dead bodies and seeing flowering trees of a golden hue. It's a metaphor for just utter delusion. He says the king must have been listening to the evil advice of ghosts with large red eyes staring back at him. It's a highly poetic, terrifying way of saying that the leadership has completely lost its grip on reality and morality.
Act 3. The Fallen Conquerors.
Now we pivot a bit.
Balarama reminds us exactly who it is that has been exiled here. These aren't just innocent victims. They are some of the most formidable powers on the planet. To grasp the tragic scale of their fall, we just have to contrast their past with their present. We have the heroes, Bhima, Sahadeva, and Nakula. In the past, they were apex warriors. Bhima single-handedly conquered all the rulers of the east. Sahadeva took down the kings of the south. Nakula conquered the west. Now look at where they are today. Bhima is miserably dressed in bark. Sahadeva is in a hermit's dress. Nakula is surviving on roots and fruit, with his body besmeared with dirt. The contrast between their cosmic power and their current pathetic situation is just staggering. And we absolutely can't overlook the specific tragedy of Draupadi here. She is a king's daughter. The source text actually notes that she took her rise from beneath the altar during the pomp of sacrificial rites. She was literally born of divine fire, totally accustomed to a life of absolute happiness and luxury, and now she's enduring an exceedingly miserable existence out in the unforgiving woods. It really highlights the deeply personal human cost of this grand political betrayal.
The inevitable wrath.
But, all of this current suffering, it really feels like the calm before the storm. Balarama begins to zero in intensely on the suppressed might of these brothers, specifically focusing on the terrifying, bubbling anger of Bhima. Just listen to this description. This Bhima here, whose voracious appetite is like that of a wolf, is able to destroy with the sole strength of his powerful arms a formidable array of hostile troops. Balarama points out that Bhima doesn't even need weapons. His bare hands are enough. In the past, just the sound of his war cry completely unmanned enemy forces on the battlefield. He is a literal force of nature who happens to currently be trapped in a forest. The text makes a really bold claim here. It says there is not throughout the whole world one single soul who can boast of strength and prowess equal to his. Not one. Which makes his current state, emaciated from the cold, heat, winds, hunger, and thirst, so incredibly shocking to Balarama. How can the strongest being on the planet be starving in the dirt while the wicked get to feast? And this maps out the timeline of inevitable justice that Balarama sees coming. In the past, Bhima conquered the east and returned completely safe and uninjured. In the present, sure, he's suffering terribly, exhausted by toilsome journeys. But the future? Balarama says that when Bhima finally takes up his weapons and meets his foes on the battlefield, he's going to remember every single second of this miserable forest life. He will not leave a single man out of his foes alive. He's going to kill his enemies to a man. The current starvation is just a temporary delay before a devastating, absolute revenge. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today, and right back to the ultimate mind-bending frustration of this whole situation. Balarama ends his speech with a question that honestly echoes through the ages. Seeing the virtuous completely destroyed and driven out, he asks, "When Duryodhana began to flourish, why did not the earth subside with all its hills? Why didn't the planet itself just collapse under the crushing weight of this cosmic injustice?" It really leads us to ponder. When the systems of the world fail the righteous, what forces are left to balance the scales? Think about that the next time you see someone getting away with the unthinkable. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning.